You know, you worked your whole life for your money. You save it, you invest it, and you kind of expect that in retirement you can get it when you need it. But what if walking into your own bank to get your own cash suddenly got, well, complicated? What if a rule from way back in 1970 mixed with some new banking policies could actually put your funds on hold, flag your account, and just create a massive headache you never ever saw coming? We're going to untangle all of this because what you don't know really can affect your financial freedom.
Just imagine hearing those words. That's a real quote. A 74-year-old woman heard that when she tried to take out $18,000 to pay a contractor for a new roof. I mean, she had the money. It was her money, but the bank just said, nope, not right now. And look, this isn't some made-up scenario. It's the reality a lot of retirees are starting to face. And it all comes from this tangled web of really old laws and brand new procedures.
So how do we make sense of all this? Well, in this explainer, we're going to start with the surprising origin of a rule from 1970. Then we'll get into the new hurdles that have popped up at banks. We're also going to cut right through all the confusing online noise and separate the facts from the fiction. And probably most important, we'll finish with a super clear plan to make sure you can always get to your money when you need it.
Okay, so to really get why a totally normal transaction today can suddenly raise a big red flag, we have to jump in the time machine and go way back. The root of this whole mess is a single number that was set in stone more than half a century ago.
The law is called the Bank Secrecy Act, and it was signed back in 1970. The goal was pretty simple: fight money laundering and organized crime by making banks report big cash transactions. And the magic number they picked for a large transaction? $10,000.
And here is the absolute key detail. That $10,000 number has not changed, not by a single penny in over 50 years. It's just been frozen in time while the entire world economy completely transformed around it.
So what would that be worth today if it had just kept up with inflation? Well, according to the government's own data, that $10,000 from 1970 would be worth about $75,000 today. Just let that sink in for a second. A law that was designed to catch transactions that felt like 75 grand is still stuck at 10.
I mean, just think about how disconnected that is. In 1970, 10 grand could buy you 2 brand new Cadillacs. But today, perfectly normal things. A kitchen remodel, helping a kid with a down payment, a major medical bill, all of those can easily fly right past that ancient limit.
So what actually happens when you take out more than $10,000 in cash? Your bank has to file something called a Currency Transaction Report, or a CTR. It's automatic, it's routine. Millions get filed every year. And this part is crucial. It goes to FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, not directly to the IRS. A CTR by itself doesn't mean you did anything wrong at all.
And this really just sums it all up. A law that was designed to catch drug traffickers carrying around suitcases full of cash is now getting triggered by regular retirees doing totally normal things. That huge gap between the old rule and our new reality, that's why things are getting so strange at the bank.
But hey, it's not just about that old rule. In just the last few years, new policies and some really smart technology have added all these new layers of complexity, creating brand new risks for retirees who are just trying to get their own money. We're going to focus on 2 big ones. First, this trend of banks putting holds and freezes on withdrawals, where they can literally stop you from getting your cash. And second, the rise of these super smart algorithms that are built to flag something called structuring, which, believe it or not, can have really serious legal consequences.
Now, the idea behind these holds, it actually comes from a good place. Federal agencies have been pushing banks to be more careful about protecting seniors from scams. I mean, elder financial fraud is a huge problem, so banks now have the power to just pause a transaction if they think a customer is being tricked.
But how long can these holds last? That's where it gets really murky. Depending on your state's laws and the bank's own internal rules, a hold could last anywhere from 72 hours all the way up to 45 business days. The point is, the bank has a lot of discretion, and you could be cut off from your own money for days or even weeks. Which brings us right back to Margaret, the woman who was just trying to pay her roofer. The bank held her $18,000 because they were worried she was being scammed. And in her real story, they were right, it was a scam. But what if the roofer was legit? What if she just really needed to pay for real work on her house? In that version of the story, she's completely stuck, unable to pay, her money held hostage by a policy that's trying to do good but is just getting in the way. That's the frustration so many people feel.
Okay, this second danger is even more serious. It's a crime called structuring. Basically, it's when someone intentionally breaks up a big cash transaction into smaller pieces just to stay under that $10,000 reporting rule. And here's the part that'll blow your mind.
It doesn't matter if your money is 100% clean, legal, and from your life savings. If the government can prove you broke up the transaction on purpose to avoid the report, you've committed a federal felony.
Let me tell you about Terry Deschko. He ran a small grocery store in Michigan for decades. And to stay within the rules of his own insurance policy, he just got into the habit of depositing his daily cash in amounts just under $10,000. He wasn't dodging taxes or laundering money. He was just following his insurance rules. But a bank algorithm saw the pattern, flagged it as structuring, and boom, the IRS seized $35,000 right out of his account.
And this is how it can happen. An algorithm flags a pattern. Then a person at the bank might file what's called a Suspicious Activity Report, or SAR. This can kick off something called civil asset forfeiture, which is this bizarre legal thing where the government actually sues your money directly, and then the burden of proof totally flips. You have to prove your money is innocent to get it back.
And please don't think these are just rare cases that only catch actual criminals. A 2017 audit by the Treasury's own Inspector General found that in more than 90%, 9 out of 10 of the structuring cases they looked at, the money seized was from totally legal sources. We're talking small business owners, farmers, and retirees, not crime lords. So, as you can probably imagine, a topic this complicated and, frankly, this scary has created a total storm of information online. Some of it's helpful, and some of it is just dangerously wrong. So let's take a minute and clear up some of the biggest myths and contradictions out there.
All right, first up, the big one that causes so much anxiety, especially when we talk about apps like Venmo, PayPal, and Zelle. Is the government really tracking every single payment you make over $600? Here's the truth. One of our sources claims this threshold is dropping to $600, but, and this is a huge but, another source clarifies that Congress actually reversed that plan. The rule right now is this: reporting is only required for people who get payments for goods and services that add up to more than $20,000 and through more than 200 transactions in a year. Personal payments, like sending money to your grandkids for their birthday, they're not reported.
Okay, here's another one that gets people worked up. If your bank files one of those suspicious activity reports on you, are you going to get a letter in the mail letting you know?
Well, our sources show a major contradiction on this. One tells a story about a couple getting a letter, but another source points to the actual federal law. And Title 31 of the U.S. Code makes it a criminal offense for anyone at a bank to tip off a customer that a SAR has been filed. So, any story you hear about getting a direct notification letter in the mail, it's just not how it works under the law.
And finally, as we start to move towards solutions, let's get our words right. Both sources talk about this protective form you can file at your bank, but they call it different things. What should you actually be asking for when you walk in?
One source calls it a Senior Safe Banking Authorization. The other one calls it a Trusted Contact Designation. They sound kind of similar, but using the right name is absolutely critical.
The correct, industry standard term you want to use is Trusted Contact Designation. That other name, according to our source, isn't actually a real product offered by major banks. So asking for the right form makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, we have covered the history, the new dangers, and the myths. Now for the most important part, the clear, simple, actionable steps you can take, like this week, to protect yourself and make sure your transactions go smoothly. We've pulled together the best advice into a simple acronym, SAFE. First up, S is for state your purpose. Before any big transaction, just call your branch manager and tell them what you're doing. Simple. Second, A is for avoid splitting. If you need to move $15,000, move $15,000. Don't try to get clever. That's the exact pattern the computers are looking for. Third, F is for file your paperwork. Just go to your bank and fill out that Trusted Contact Designation form. And finally, E is for elect to use wires. For big transfers, a wire is often a much better and safer bet than cash, and it's less likely to set off false alarms.
And let's be super clear about what this trusted contact can and can't do. This person is for verification, that's it. They can answer a call from the bank to confirm that, yep, you really are buying a car. They cannot touch your money, they can't see your balance, and they definitely can't make any transactions for you. It is purely a layer of protection, not a transfer of control.
And here is one last, really crucial piece of advice. Get into the habit of documenting. For any transaction over, say, $5,000, just jot down the details in a notebook. The date, the amount, who it came from, who it went to, and why. If your account ever gets flagged for some reason, this simple little logbook becomes your absolute best defense.
Look, the bottom line here is simple. You shouldn't need to hire a lawyer just to move your own money.
And you definitely shouldn't be afraid of your own bank. You worked your whole life for this, and with the right information, you can get back that control and that confidence.
And finally, there's actually a sign of hope. This outdated rule is finally getting some attention in Washington. There's a bill called the Streamline Act that was recently introduced in Congress to fix this very problem. If it passes, the act would make two really common-sense changes. First, it would immediately raise the reporting limit from $10,000 up to $30,000. And second, it would require that limit to be adjusted for inflation every 5 years, so we never end up in this ridiculous situation again. Now, it's not law yet, but it's a very promising sign.
Which leaves us with the big question. Will this rule, this relic from a totally different economic era, finally get the modern update it so desperately needs? The answer is going to affect millions of retirees, and it'll determine whether managing your own money gets simpler and safer, or somehow even more complicated.